ladies and gentlemen. We have with us today Mr. Ajay Bhatt, inventor of a technology that we all have used for a very long time, continue to use, the USB. Um, he's a bit of a rock star. Intel calls him a rock star, if I am not mistaken. There are ads made on his personality that Intel, and I saw one of them on YouTube. So good to have you with us, Ajay.
Thank you.
And let me begin by asking why is it called the universal serial bus? Why not a universal serial taxi or a cab or anything of that sort?
Well, because we were really lousy at naming new things. No, but kidding aside, prior to USB, we had, if you looked at the computer, you had variety of connectors. And each of them was for a very specific purpose. So you had to match the right personality with the right connector, or the right usage with the connector. What we conceived was one connector that did it all. And that's why we called it universal.
Yeah.
And since the technology was serial technology,
Right.
we just call it a universal serial bus.
Right. Right. All right. How did the idea of coming up with something like this strike you? I mean, was it frustration with the CD drive that wasn't working or anything else?
Actually, USB was conceived well before the CD
Okay.
ever existed.
Okay.
It was basically my own frustration and also observing frustration at home when my wife and daughter would try to use the computer. And that's when I thought that there had to be a better way to interact with the computer and avoid, bunch of reboots and bunch of surprises. Computers in 80s and early 90s were actually designed by engineers, for engineers,
Right.
or for technical folks.
Right.
And I always had this vision of making computers easy to use. And for the last 25 years, that's been my mission. In every generation, I'm trying to make computers easy to use.
Right. Right. So how did you go about it first? What were some of the initial challenges that you faced, and how did the process begin, and how did you take it forward?
Well, so the first thing I had to do was to sort of come up with the concept. And the concept was plug and play. The word that we used was plug and play. And like any other startup, I had to go around the company and I proposed my idea to a bunch of people. And it took more than a year to even convince people of a problem statement and associated opportunity for us to do something there. But, by being persistent, I was able to convince people inside Intel first. So we started developing this technology at Intel first. Once we had initial concepts, then we reached out to Microsoft and IBM and DEC and a bunch of other partners that we eventually had.
Right. So as you said, you reached out to Apple, you reached out to Microsoft, you reached out to IBM. They didn't get it. Intel did. Why do you think that happened? Was it because Intel was manufacturing chips? Is it because of that lineage that they got it, or any other reason?
No, I think it's probably not accurate to say that our partners didn't get it. It's just that when we started, I saw this opportunity for us to sort of provide thought leadership when it came to evolving the PC platform. So that's where we started, because even then we were the predominant supplier of the computer chips for all the personal computers. And we did fair amount of R&D at Intel. And we collaborated with some of the key OEMs or platform leaders. So it just happened that I saw the opportunity of evolving the platform. Initially socialized it inside Intel, and then eventually we took it to our usual partners.
Okay. I was reading somewhere that you thought that the USB was a one-off $40 million opportunity. You didn't think that it would be the multi-billion-dollar opportunity that it is. You never made any money from royalty. You gave it away as an open technology. Do you regret it, perhaps?
Well, when you work for a multinational company, and when you work for them, the intellectual property that you create, it is usually owned by the company that you work for.
Right.
Obviously, they recognize you handsomely. But from very beginning, our view of USB was that these computers were very difficult to use. And in order to promote new users and attract new users to this platform with this capability, that we had to open up this technology and make it available very broadly. It is very similar to some of the crowdsourcing model that exists now,
Right.
where you just open things up and let innovation happen.
Right.
And in mid 90s, when we came out with the technology, it instantly became initially very popular for developers, and then eventually for end users.
Right, right. But no regrets that you didn't, or even Intel gave it away for as an open technology for that matter. Even they didn't make too much by way of charging royalty or anything of that sort.
Well, like I said, we decided to do that, and for me personally, I'm a computer scientist. I get great joy in inventing things and seeing the impact of my inventions on the rest of the world. And this is truly a dream come true. And I'm not just saying it for the sake of saying it. For me, coming up with a vision of something new, getting fellow travelers to work with us, and even add to my original idea is really a dream job. And that is what motivates me to get up in the morning and go to work, even after 36 years in this industry.
Wow. The USB is right now used in about 10 billion devices, correct me if I'm wrong, or more than that.
It may be about 10 billion a year.
10 billion a year. All right. And it has pretty much become the standard of connectivity and transferring data. But what is the next frontier in terms of ubiquitous technology, which will, because devices are shrinking, devices are evolving. So what is going to be the next frontier of ubiquitous technology, and what are you working on currently?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So my own thoughts on, the new computing model, right? We all are connected all the time, right? We have smart devices with us, and we have smart buildings, we have smart cars, right? Smart machines, whatever. So we're in the world of intelligent devices. And the device that you use really depends on the context that we're in.
Right.
It means, whatever we're trying to do at any given point.
Right.
If you're in office, you want to do email, you have a bunch of choices. If you're at home, you want to have entertainment, you have other choices, right? So you have different form factors. But in all these cases, what is important is that we bring down complexity.
Right.
In any given experience. So I am in the field of personal computers and clients, and I think that the next frontier is the natural data types or natural way to communicate with our computing devices. And I am working on a novel way to interact with personal computer. I have a new architecture for touch in large screen systems. And we are working on something called universal stylus. A most precise stylus today is active stylus. It has electronics, and it sends signal to the computer. So if you look at iPad Pro that has a pencil, that is $100 smart stylus. Samsung and Microsoft and others, they all have styluses. But this stylus is captive, or it only works with a given platform. What I want to do is develop a stylus technology that works across, various manufacturers' systems and make stylus ubiquitous. I want to bring down the cost, such that kids going to the school can afford to take it, parents can afford to buy it, and even if you lose one, you can buy another one. And as long as the stylus is $100, that is not going to happen.
Okay. How much, what could be the cost of this stylus when it comes into the market?
Since we're going to have a common standard that everybody can adopt, obviously the volumes will go up, and these volumes for, imagine, if every phone and every PC and every tablet shipped with a technology like this,
Right.
then again you'll have billions of styluses every year that people will buy.
Right.
And price will come down significantly based on, feature sets and the functionality that these styluses will provide. So my job is to work with industry to create a foundational technology, remove the technical barriers to bring down the cost,
Right.
and then let marketplace dictate, how low they can go.
Right. The USB, is it here to stay? Because we see a lot of new technologies coming up in the form of near field communication. There is Bluetooth. There are ways and means of wirelessly transferring data. So, and probably the storage device remains your device. But transfer, as far as transferring data is concerned, you can do it in different ways. So what's the future of the USB?
So this is a very good question. We deal with devices that are shrinking in size, they're getting thin and thin, so putting connectors becomes very difficult. However, in the world of wireless technologies, you still need one wire. You need a wire to actually provide a power. Even when people are trying wireless charging, there are times when you need to charge something very fast. So wires are here to stay. In number of devices, nowadays USB is the way to power a device. Now USB has lasted for 20 years,
Right.
As we speak here. I see USB stick around here for another 20 years.
Okay.
Because we just announced a new version of USB called USB Type-C, which actually removes one of the major pain points of USB, and that is the connector. How many times you've tried to put a connector wrong and it doesn't go in?
Right.
So we've made this connector smaller, symmetric, and flippable.
Okay.
So now both ends of the wire are identical,
Okay.
right? And this wire now will provide power up to 100 watts. So I could actually build a laptop and charge a laptop using USB cable and USB power supply. So we're going to make this USB more ubiquitous. So your next generation cars, your next generation homes will also have USB as one of the connectivity standards.
Excellent. You have extensive experience of having worked in Silicon Valley. What are some of the differences that you see in India vis-a-vis the Silicon Valley? I mean, it is very well known that there is a significant talent pool in India. We have probably, correct me if I'm wrong again, but we have the second largest pool of programmers. Someone told me recently. We have innovators across fields. But in terms of the ecosystem, are we lacking? What can be done, and what are the differences, key differences that you have seen vis-a-vis Silicon Valley and the Indian context?
Well, since I've left India a long time ago, I'm no longer expert on India, but I can tell you the culture of, I can tell you about the culture of innovation in Silicon Valley. This is one of the most dynamic places in the world. And all this progress that you see is really enabled by the culture.
Right.
Culture of openness, culture that, sort of avoids hierarchy, right? So having an environment where we do possibility thinking, where we don't judge the idea, as they're developed and, in the early phases of the idea, when you go to Bay Area, you'll always find somebody that'll listen to your good idea, they'll add to it. So I think that openness is very, very important, right? And just having this can-do attitude and also having this attitude that, if I can do it, anybody else should be able to do it. And so we have a big facility in Bangalore here, and we have some of the most brilliant, engineers that I've found anywhere in the world. They are some of the most creative people. And every time I come in here, what I try to do is to encourage these people, tell their management to be open-minded, and I help them bring down the barriers. I give them access to other engineers and other, some of the domain experts within Intel. And it is actually proving to be very, very successful program that we're doing. So I primarily, come here for mentoring.
All right. One thing I want to, sort of come back to the point where giving away technology at a nominal or no cost. I mean, obviously the USB was given away as an open technology. We've seen now Windows 10 being given away at no cost to the users. Is that the way to go? I mean, is that the way to go where software and technology...
Well, given away is a very subjective thing.
Made available to the user.
Every time we do some of these technologies, right, it's like building highways. When you do some fundamental technologies, interconnect technologies, may that be Wi-Fi or USB or anything else, even if we kept it ourselves, then we could put it on our computer, but then somebody else, we had to connect with something else. So when you develop this interconnect technology, it's like building highways, open it up. And if you want to make money, you can make money building better cars or trucks or whatever, getting into transportation.
Right.
So that's how I see some of the infrastructure investments. What USB did was actually expand the market for computers, right? Prior to USB, the computers were very difficult to interface with. And we're in the computing business. Intel builds microprocessors, some of the best in the world. Now, we wanted to bring data crunch this data. And USB has been one way to bring data into the computer from CD drives or, from disks or whatever else, cameras. So we're able to bring this data in to enable some new users, and that has attracted a lot more users. And this was all before, you had tablets and phones. So if you just look at the bigger picture, we've had a profound impact on the computer industry, and I think we benefited a lot, while everybody else benefited, but this was really a win-win scenario for the industry.
Ajay, before we conclude, any final words of advice for a lot of budding innovators, engineers here present amongst us here today and in the country in general?
Well, even though I work in a big company, every venture that I've had has been a startup within a big company with this backing. But there's one thing that I've learned. Engineering is, series of failures followed by occasional successes. If you're going to have failures, you wish that they happen early in your program. But you learn from your mistakes as much as you learn from your successes. As a matter of fact, you can learn a lot more from your failures than from your successes. Even when you fail, one has to stand up and get going, because ultimately you will succeed if you just be persistent. And don't allow anybody to discourage you, because when you have a new idea, rejection is part and parcel of any new idea, because people are not going to get it. But eventually, you'll realize if you stick with it, that people will get it and you'll get the success.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your insights today, Ajay. Lovely chatting with you, and I hope we've been able to impress upon our audience today the importance of technological evolution. And all the best with your work on the Stylus. We look forward to seeing it in the market very soon.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.